today's text. This text is about the storm and the calming of the sea. And they talk about the power of God to calm the storms of our lives so that we might have clear sailing, that our lives will be smooth and we'll never have any problems at all because God is with us. I'm not so sure that that's where this text is taking us. As I wrestled with this text all week, I'm not sure that's where we're going. I think there's a bigger point than that. There may be a sense, and there certainly is a sense, I've seen miracles where God has reached in and calmed the storms of life on occasion. But I've also seen great suffering. I think there's a bigger point to this text. The point of the text for me is the final unanswered question. The question doesn't get answered in the text. Who then is this that even the winds and the sea obey him? You see, that's the right question. That's the question that we need to ask. The first question was the wrong question. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? That's the wrong question. They weren't asking Jesus to save them at that point. Many people think that's what they were talking about, but they weren't asking Jesus to save them. They didn't even realize Jesus had the power to save them from that kind of event. They had no idea. They were simply expecting him to be just as upset as they were in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the peril. They were including Jesus in the we. Don't you care that we are perishing? How can you be asleep in the back of a boat? How can you be so nonchalant when the world is crumbling around us? When the storm is raging? How can you be so relaxed and calm? You have to remember that at least 4 of these men in this boat were fishermen. They were experienced on the Sea of Galilee. They understood what it meant to be caught in a storm in the evening as the sun was going down in the middle of the Galilean lake. Now we hear lake and we think, it's a lake. But it's big. It's a big lake. And it's surrounded by these huge cliffs on all sides except for the southern end. These sheer cliffs. And what happens at night, because the Lake of Galilee is some 700 feet below sea level. It's one of the lowest points. And what happens at night is the cool air rushes down the side of these cliffs and then hits the warm air of the surface of the water, and these storms just spring up. Nobody who really knows the Sea of Galilee tends to go across the center of it at night when there's cool air coming down to start these storms. These fishermen knew when it was going to be an uncomfortable sail across the Sea of Galilee and when their lives were in danger. They knew the difference. And the scriptures tell us, were panicking. Matter of fact, the Greek word that's used for the word fear in that part of the text is cowardly. They were being cowardly. They were afraid for their lives. And they thought Jesus should be too. And so the question, don't you care that we are perishing, is the question that they thought everybody should be answering. They thought that was the right question, but it was the wrong question. Soon they discovered that the right question was a different question. Talk a little bit about storms and water in biblical text. It's often symbolic of something else. We see in the creation story the chaos, and it's pictured as water. As we hear about the creation, and then the Spirit of God takes that water and separates it out and creates the land. We talk about water in the Old Testament speaks of, and in the New Testament, in Revelation in some places, it speaks of chaos and evil, things beyond our control, things that frighten and scare us. Water has the ability to do that even today, to frighten and scare us in some situations. But these things, chaos, evil, and things beyond our control, they're things that strike fear into our hearts. I don't know of many people who do not fear utter chaos, or do not fear real evil, or do not fear the things that overwhelm them and take them beyond the ability to control their own situation. I I think one of the reasons the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in September 11th, 2001 were so powerful and still cause fear in many people is because it encompasses all of those things. It was certainly chaotic after those events. There was nothing but sheer chaos in the moments and the hours after those events. It was certainly real evil when someone decided, or some people decided to just take the lives of innocents in a moment. And it was certainly things that overwhelmed us and were well beyond our control, and things that we could do nothing about as it played out. Cancer is another thing that drives fear into our minds. Many of us have lost loved ones to this disease in its various forms. I don't know how many of you are aware right now, but Lee Morgan is in hospice. Went out on a prayer chain. For those of you who don't have a prayer chain, many of you know Lee. She usually sits in the back, and she was on some experimental medication, and the doctors don't believe it's working. We're still holding out some hope, but the doctors have suggested that she be placed in hospice at this time. And it's a brain cancer, is what she's been fighting, what she's been battling. And it's a scary thing. It's a hard thing. It strikes fear into our hearts. My 2-year-old nephew died from cancer. It was beyond our control. There was nothing that we could do about it. It nearly cost me my relationship with God when that event occurred. And it was because I was asking the wrong question. I was asking, don't you care that my nephew was perishing? That was the question that was on my mind. God, don't you care? It wasn't until I learned the right question that I was able to be reconciled again with God. Who then is this? That even in the wind and the wind and the sea obey. I took a spiritual renewal leave in 1999. Every 4 years we're allowed to take a month's spiritual renewal leave. That doesn't count against our vacation because ministry is often somewhat draining. Often somewhat, anyway, it is. And you know, we deal with a lot of issues of everybody's families. And sometimes we need to just get away and regenerate because you can't give what you don't have. And so I decided for my spiritual renewal leave, and many of you know so many stories. I think the story I'm going to tell you today is a little different than ones I've told you in the past. But I decided to take a little 18-foot sailboat and sail it out of the mouth of the Morris River in Cumberland County, up the Delaware River, through the C&D Canal, and down into the Chesapeake, and anchor off an island called Park Miller Island, just north of Baltimore, and take approximately 30 days to do this all by myself, single-handed. I loaded a bunch of food on board and some good books. My sister heard what I was doing, and she thought she'd be helpful. Good American Baptist pastor that she is. She thought she'd be helpful, and so she gave me some books to read to take with me. The Hungry Ocean. The God-Forsaken Sea. Not a great read if you're out alone on a boat. A little 18-foot boat, mind you. Oh yes, and let us not forget the classic, The Perfect Storm, which in '99 the movie had not come out yet. This is the only way you could get this wonderful piece of information was to read it. So my sister, my loving sister, gave these to me to take with me. So that kind of sets the stage for my spiritual renewal leave. I tell people it was a great time of relaxation, interspersed with moments of sheer terror, and that's really what it was. The story I want to talk to you about today was my trip home. It was the day after Linda and my anniversary. It was the 13th. I got to get this right now that I said that. It was the 13th of August, and I had 2 days left on my journey home, and I was in the Delaware. I had left what many sailors think is one of the most beautiful places to sail, the Chesapeake Bay, into one of the bodies of water that is most